Good evening. These are the stories making the headlines in the Hot 7 Nightly News. A demonstration demanding justice for slain Kimberly De Leon is postponed, but social partners and concerned citizens say they are not deterred in their fight. The Venezuelan ambassador to St. Lucia says the Latin nation has no quarrel with this country. And a human rights activist is calling for a more effective gun policy to address the concerns about youth in possession of guns. We have the details of these stories and more coming up.
This is the Hot 7 Nightly News with Lovelace and Amy Joseph.
It is Friday, the 25th of January 2019. Welcome to the Hot 7 Nightly News. I'm Lovelace and Amy Joseph. Thank you for joining us. Social partners and concerned citizens say they have no intention of letting up their campaign demanding justice for slain Kimberly De Leon. A planned demonstration to call attention of authorities to the matter and to demand answers has been postponed, but this has not deterred the activists and ordinary citizens who say they will be ready to demonstrate as soon as they receive the official go-ahead. Rochelle Gonzalez reports.
Social partners and concerned citizens say they have no intentions of letting up their campaign demanding justice for slain Kimberly De Leon. A planned demonstration to call the attention of authorities to the matter and demand answers has been postponed, but this has not deterred the activists and ordinary citizens who say they will be ready to demonstrate as soon as they receive the official go-ahead.
The recent case with Kimberly De Leon has left a very concerning dilemma for us as advocates. We're still awaiting the commissioner to provide us with some information on that. I was told that today we should have had a proposed march, but I don't think that the paperwork was done by the organizers, and so the march had to be postponed. But it does not remove us from advocating on her behalf. It's very important that we have to continuously to advocate for the rights of women, the rights that women and men live in all environments which is free from violence. So we're appealing again to our commissioner, we're appealing to the police, so as once they find some kind of credible information that they can share to the public.
Brown said time is of the essence, and the longer the wait for justice, the more angst will be brewing among the populace.
At this stage, we're very anxious. We're still awaiting to hear what is the outcome of that case. We're hoping that very soon we'll have a perpetrator in captivity, but again, we want to let the police know that we're there to support them, and we'll continue to support them, and we're appealing to the public to provide any kind of information to the police, that whatever information that they have to provide that to the police, because Kimberly De Leon deserved justice, and she deserved the justice that is required for her, and we want to also encourage the public to know that violence against women is never acceptable in any form.
Kimberly De Leon was killed in her home on October 29, 2018. A post-mortem revealed that the mother of two died as a result of a single gunshot wound to the head. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Rochelle Gonzalez.
The Venezuelan ambassador to St. Lucia says the Latin nation has no quarrel with St. Lucia and respects its position as part of Lima. The ambassador says the goal is for resolve as the two countries try to maintain their diplomatic ties amid a tense situation and questions about the legitimacy of the Maduro presidency. Solange Alfred reports.
Creating diplomatic ties between nations can have a lasting positive or negative impact on a nation. As of right now, St. Lucia is one of many countries that has allied with the Lima Group. This group refuses to recognize Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro as the legitimate leader of the nation. As of January 23rd, a number of governments, inclusive of Canada, Argentina, Costa Rica, and the United States, have chosen to back opposition leader Juan Guaido as the interim president of Venezuela. Although St. Lucia has not made any statements regarding the new interim president, Ambassador of Venezuela, Laif Barrueta, addressed some recent statements made by Foreign Affairs Minister Sarah Flood-Bobre, who stated that the decision made by the government of St. Lucia to oppose Maduro's presidency was not influenced by political superpowers.
We respect the different opinions from different countries, different governments, everybody has their own opinion. And in fact, in our bilateral relationship, we continue with our historic relation, with our diplomatic relationship, and it's not affected. Sometimes some opinion and some problems in different issues. In the case of St. Lucia, for example, the government and the different persons in the government express they are worried because the security in St. Lucia and different worries about security issue.
According to Barrueta, Venezuela wishes to work with the island of St. Lucia to bring a speedy resolve to the security threat that has caused the St. Lucian government to impose visa restrictions on Venezuelans. In fact, the Venezuelan nation does not believe this to be an act that will cause the severing of ties between the two nations.
We don't have a problem with any restriction because many countries have different restrictions like this. But of course, I think maybe it's not forever, it's for a few years, or I'm not sure. But Venezuela is in the middle, like St. Lucia, and a lot of Caribbean countries, between Colombia, that is the principal producer of drugs in the world. It's not in this region, in the world. Colombia is our neighbor. And the United States is the principal consumer of drugs. And of course, we have to work together because it's the same problem that you have here, we have in Venezuela. And always, we try to maintain our policy against this kind of traffic of drugs. And of course, in this moment, we are working in one agreement between Venezuela and St. Lucia in this matter.
Meanwhile, the government of St. Lucia remains firm that the reason behind its decision to oppose the presidency of Nicolas Maduro remains the illegitimate electoral process of May 2018 that saw Maduro advancing to a second term in office for the period 2019 to 2025. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Swelej Alfred.
Human rights activist Felicia Brown is calling for a more effective gun policy to address the concerns about illegal guns and crimes perpetrated with these weapons. She says there is a lot more work to be done to make youth aware of the danger of guns. Rochelle Gonzalez reports.
Social activist Felicia Brown has expressed deep concerns over the government's gun policies in the wake of two recent matters surrounding secondary school boys who were caught carrying firearms. She implored the powers that be to enforce tougher legislation to target the issue at its very core.
I think that was a void in the bill, and I believe that the administration needs to seriously take a look or revise the bill if at any opportunity. It may take a couple of years, but it's needed to be done, because what we're seeing is that those young persons cannot afford to buy a gun. Those young persons cannot afford to even ship a gun. So where are they getting those types of weapons from? And if they are being used, meaning as persons, if these young minors are being used by individuals within the criminal world, I believe that they should be held accountable differently. I believe that a child is being used for any kind of criminal activity, I think there should be a different penalty for the perpetrators in that case.
Brown also appealed to the government to look into the new child justice bill that was recently passed, as she stated that there are some very blurred lines when looking into children's rights.
We're seeing the age of a minor being under the age of 18, yet at the same time the same document claims that the age of a young person being the age from 17 to 21. And it's very interesting that such blurred lines between what would be considered a child or minor or what is considered a young person. We have to be very clear when we pass legislation, particularly when it deals with children.
Government representatives have stated in the past that the Child Protection Bill is high on their priority list. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I'm Rochelle Gonzalez.
A professional counselor says he's deeply concerned that St. Lucia is quickly losing its young people to crime. He says the government holds the country's purse strings, and so it is incumbent on them to put money to work in favor of youth. He He says it cannot be overemphasized, the level of investment that is needed in young people. Calixtus Jean-Louis is a professional counselor who has worked with delinquent youth for many years. He says the situation is getting much worse and requires urgent attention and money. He says, make no bones about it, the rescuing of youth requires allocation of funding by government into social programs. He says people need to put government policy under the microscope to ensure that the country is doing all in its power to address crime.
I will look at their budget. How much money are they investing in young people? How much money are they investing in communities that are at risk, high-risk communities? That is important. Because if we are not willing to invest in communities, if we're not willing to invest in the youth, if we're not willing to invest in families, if we're not willing to invest in creating employment, and when I talk about creating employment, I'm looking at short term, because we cannot wait 2, 3, 4 years for big projects to unfold.
Jean-Louis says the level of youth unemployment continues to concern him. As a result, he says young people are slipping through the cracks and down the rabbit hole of illicit activity.
Research has shown there's a high correlation between unemployment and crime. And a lot of what we are seeing there, we are seeing a lot of the buffers, a lot of the factors which you call protective factors that would prevent a lot of what we see there. They are basically non-existent, or very little is being pumped into young people.
He makes the case that given the importance of social safety nets, governments must have this reflected in their budgets. You're watching the Hot 7 Nightly News. Stay with us. There's much more coming up after the break.